Guys,
Cool.
thank y'all so much for coming, man. I appreciate it.
Okay. We can get
We got
moving in just a minute here. Let me just make sure we got everybody. Anson will be joining us in just a moment. Man, already got a nice little crowd in here. We got 50 people hanging out. Everybody, give me a thumbs up if you got us all loud and clear, and if you are ready to go.
So Clubhouse is a wrap?
I guess so, man. I guess so.
Damn, y'all done dead at Clubhouse. Damn, it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, man. Once this is the thing, right? And I mean, I want to do intros real quick, so we'll just go through. But I mean, that's a great topic to touch on. It's just like, how are people connecting in this kind of virtual space, right? Whether it's Twitter, Clubhouse, whatever. Okay. So Royce doesn't need any introduction. Illmind, you want to just introduce yourself for our crowd here?
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it. Like, so first of all, shout to Royce, Guru, all the girls in here, and everybody taking their time out of their day to listen. But yeah, man, I'm a music producer. Got into Web3 stuff around late 2020, early 2021, and got my project that I launched back in March called Squatter Nights. Shout to a few of my nights that are in here. Throw up those hearts if you're in here right now. But yeah, just being in the space, and the subject of Web3 and music has quickly become a thing. And with all this AI talk and everything that's going on now, I think it's even that much more urgent for us to get together and have these conversations. So definitely honored to talk about it. And I produced a few records here and there too.
Yeah, heck yeah. Illmind is underselling himself as just an incredible producer. I mean, just Google the brother and you'll see it. But 100%, yeah, I think the advancement in technology forces us to have these conversations to be like, where are things going? What's happening on this frontier? Guru, please, again, like, I feel like you guys don't need an introduction, but for those who are just crypto heads wandering their way into the music scene, or just virtual nomads, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, because it feels like bragging when you do that, but it's like
right.
Yeah.
This is a safe space for that, man.
All good. I'm Young Guru. I've been involved in the music business since 1992. I'm a DJ, most known as an engineer. Work with pretty much everybody in hip hop and R&B. What I said, DJ and engineering, production. Most notably, for those that don't know, I think most people know me for my work at Rockefeller Records over the years and working with Jay-Z and that whole team. Also, during the COVID, I started a company called Collimation, which is we focus on 360, 180 videos, as well as other things inside of what was then known as the metaverse.
Right.
So that's what Collimation does. We produce different events. One of the biggest ones was the one we did with Rhapsody, creating worlds for artists, and building things of that nature. So that's pretty much what I got into over COVID. Long time, just tech person and studied tech for a very long time. I've been there for the transition, was lucky enough to have gotten to music back in the day when we recorded on tape, to watch it all go to a computer and all of the things that we had to learn in order to be proficient at that, should I say. So, besides that, just a person who's interested in tech, avid Star Trek watcher, and just someone who's into sci-fi. But for the purposes of this conversation, it's more or less of what the sci-fi does in terms of the way that we dream and the way that we think up ideas for the future, and also sci-fi is the place where we've gone over what the ramifications of those things could be for many years. So a lot of the problems that we're seeing now, a lot of the people who are in my world and that sort of world have already thought through these things from a bunch of different perspectives and avenues, and an avid reader of a lot of the people who are creating these things, the Jared Lanier's of the world, and the Eric J. Lawsons of the world, and the Michio Kaku's of the world, and all those people, reading all of their books. So that's pretty much who I am in a nutshell.
I love that, man. I love that. And again, I think there's just a wild intersection here, especially with this crowd, between music and technology. And these things are just really important because I think musicians are one of the world's best innovators, right? Just in the way
Absolutely.
people think, just in the way musicians are forced to kind of solve unique problems. Yeah, I mean, these are the people we want to be talking to. So we also got my boy Ansem, brother, my fellow DGen, also a wise voice amidst a bunch of craziness in the Web3 world. You want to introduce yourself real quick?
Well, good, man. I don't know why I'm up here with these legends on stage, but I'm Zion. I've been in crypto for a while now, probably since like 2017. So I went to Georgia Tech, studied computer science there. My minor was in business. So I've always been interested in the intersection of like tech and finance, and I've been trading crypto, I guess, for like six years now. Yeah, so went full-time crypto like mid 2021. Basically, as you said, degen, trading everything. I did DeFi stuff, NFT stuff, trading spot, like leverage perps, whatever. Basically anything that moved in crypto is trading. And recently just joined TCG, the Churning Group, TCG Crypto as head of research. So we're a consumer crypto fund. So we do a lot looking at which applications we think are going to bring consumers kind of from Web 2 into Web 3. But have a couple of different companies where we look at the intersection of music, artists, and fans, and building those relationships out. So yeah, it's pretty much me. Also full-time tweeter. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love bringing Ansem into the conversation because, for one, if you go and check out his feed, basically he's got a really good balance of just totally off the wall insanity and very rational thinking about the technology, the market, and how things are developing right now. And I feel like we need that. We need that balance because, again, when it comes to this weird intersection of music and technology, you have to have like the craziness, right? The inspiration, the creativity, but also this very structured thinking. I feel like it's just rich in music. And we're always kind of treading this line between chaos and creativity. Yeah, so Illmind, if you want to just like, well, okay, this is one I'd love to talk through, just kind of like what are the things in front of you guys right now? What are the things you're seeing? This could be personal projects you're working on. It could be projects that you've been following that are innovating in this space. And it could be things that apply to music or things that are directly using music. It doesn't have to be like 100% music, but just like we're and I want to be thinking about Royce, you mentioned Clubhouse, right? And these platforms. Real quick. I almost forgot. We also have Rob and Kino up here from the Heaven team. Kino, yo, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Thank you. There's no introduction needed. I'm Kino. I have probably like 8 followers on Twitter now. I just logged on. No, I'm Kino. For those of you who don't know, I've been partners with Royce for 20, 25 years. So I've been in the music industry. Our partnership was my entry in the music industry. And then I've spent some time in the tech space and looking at how to merge from a marketing perspective, music and tech, which has been very interesting to see since the streaming platforms. And now, like most of these gentlemen, spent some time in crypto and learning the crypto space since 2016, 2017. Been a part and consulted on a few really good crypto projects, but like most of us looking at Web3 or Meta or whatever we want to call it, whatever it will morph into, just really interested in seeing and being part of the forerunning team of entrepreneurs and creators who see the next evolution of where Web3 can go in terms of music and entertainment, which I think will be the great equalizer for creatives and commerce. So that's me.
Amen. I love it, brother. So I want to go through and just talk about and I will say we've got 100 people in here. I got to imagine you guys have some good questions. If you have questions, click the little comment button in the bottom right. We've already got 4 comments. See that little there? We've got some people interested in about AI. If you'll just drop your comments there, if you have questions, we might have some time as well to pull people up. But the best way to get your questions seen would just be to drop it in the comments. So, Illmind, if you wouldn't mind kind of leading us off, just talking about what are the things you're seeing right now, whether it's platforms, technology, just where are people moving from and moving to when it comes to the technology people are using to connect as creators, as communities around music.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay right now?
Oh yeah, way better than
Okay,
it was
cool.
a minute ago.
All right, good. Yeah, I'm in my car now, so I just want to make sure. So what I'm noticing is sort of an extension of what has always been, which is how can we create fun and innovative and new ways to connect with our audience. And now that we have, VR and AR and all these cool, weird, new, different ways to experience things, I think we're now inserting those into, the artist fan environment. So I think that, I mean, I'm probably gonna end up saying like a bunch of buzzwords right now, so I apologize. But like, it does feel like we're still like really early on stuff. I think our job as like builders and creators and innovators is to make things as least complicated as possible. We're still converting our fans into Web3, and I think that because we're still so early, we've all experienced it. I mean, people get confused and turned off by the idea of a metaverse or the idea of like having a wallet to like buy a digital collectible. As big of a fan as someone might be, still very confusing for your everyday person. So I think as time goes by, the easier the technology gets, the more robust it becomes. I think we can create stronger connections. And by the way, like I really, really love what you guys are doing and what Royce is doing with leading the way for different ways that you can connect with your fans, and that's kind of where we're at, and I'm constantly just like observing and partaking in things that look cool, and hopefully this stuff gets better over time.
Yeah, no, dude, I love that. And I do think that key, simplify, right? Make it easier. It's tough because we've added a lot of cool things into the market, right? VR, AR, but in a lot of ways, some of these things, or even the whole Web3 world, they just complicate things. And they don't just complicate, they do add value, right? Whether it's ownership or immersion or whatever, right? Like, it's cool. I've done all of it, everything from, the VR stuff to all the different layers of Web3, but it does add complications. So as these things boil down and become more accessible, and that is why we've really focused with the Heaven experience on making something that, and with the technology at Passage, is just one click, right? We want it to be super accessible, super minimal.
Yeah, totally. And just to add to that, I don't want to take up too much time, but my hope is that we create experiences and platforms that, like you said, just like kind of move things forward, but also at the same time, while avoiding to how do you say it, like just spread it thin, like I've seen it with I've seen it with drum kits and sample packs and the sound pack, industry. I was very, 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 very early with the drum kit stuff back in 2011, and now you have platforms like Splice, where you have a monthly subscription to get unlimited sound packs. And the same is happening with music, right? The value of our IP is going down in a way, and so it's becoming easier and easier. And I'm just hoping that we went from like, hey, pay like $1,000 or like $500 for like a backstage pass to go see my favorite artist, to now like, hey, I could pay $1 a month and like see my favorite artist in their underwear through VR
Right.
at 2 in the morning. You know what I mean? You know what I'm
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
at? Like, I don't want to sound weird, but like, I just don't want this shit to become a race to the bottom. You know what I mean? So I think we have to be
You
careful.
know what I would love to do really quick, because I think for those who aren't as familiar, which I'm sure everyone here is, um, when we think of, and we didn't plan this, right? But when we think of you, Guru, speaking of you, Illmind, Royce, and Guru, this is the songwriting process from start to finish, right? It starts off with an artist or a producer, and eventually it ends up in the hands of someone like a Guru to mix it, if he was an instrumental in helping put the song together from an engineering standpoint. And so I look at all you guys as storytellers. My first my question for you and for those who may not be as familiar with the experts on here, what was the defining moment for the three of you when you realized at a point in your career where you guys were very successful in the field of music? What was the point that made you want to switch to this direction and understand the community as you see it now?
Guru, you want to start us off on that one?
Yeah, that's a perfect question because one, Royce, I started off as an engineer, and when I say that, meaning my mom was very good at putting me in programs, mainly to keep me out the street. So one of the ones that I did way back in the 80s was this thing called FAME. It was Forum for the Advancement of Minorities in Engineering. And inside of that was where sort of the bug for all types of design, all types of engineering, it just basically came from, putting people's bikes together and VCRs. And back when there was a Radio Shack, my father bought me that kit of you learning how to put circuits together. So that's sort of where my engineering bug comes from. And seeing how things developed over the years in terms of computing, from personal computers to music in the computer, to then forcing engineers to have to sort of become, I don't want to say computer programmers, but we have to know the language of computers. We had to know, how to service our computers. We had to know if we're on a Mac or a PC, what the differences are, what the different, just platforms and what they can and can't do. And then being involved in kind of trying to direct some of where the companies go and what they give us. That's sort of where it picked up for me. And it wasn't necessarily a switch for me. It was just a focus of actually making a company and not being the person that's just reading about it. Like I could have a whole lot of opinions about it, but if I'm not actively doing something, then I'm just watching the game go by. So, it's like somebody that like could tell you anything about the NBA, but they've never stepped on the court themselves, sort of thing. And then just this fear of where I guess the hot topic for me right now is just AI, and the fear of where that could go, and bringing up certain points to people and trying to explain it. I think that's a gift that I have, of being able to take things that may seem complicated, or even if it's not complicated, the verbiage, the words that are used may be foreign to people. So when you say, oh, I'm into crypto and I have a wallet, and somebody's like, what? And it's like, no, you got to be able to explain this thing. You have to know it well enough to explain it to a 10-year-old and explain like what all these different things are. And, I really try to break those concepts down to people. But the AI thing is the thing right now that just, you see me, on Instagram almost daily. And there's another guy in here, my guy Lance, that went to Howard with me. Like, it dominates our conversations because we're, as music and as creators, we have these questions on what does all of this mean, and where's our creation going when you can have AI sort of take over the jobs of what we do. There are AI programs now that will do exactly what Illmind does in terms of creating a sample, or even putting together a bunch of drums and make drum packs for someone who's never done it. Or, there's a new one that just came out that actually mixes your record for you. And these come in all these different forms, whether or not that's, I'm the independent artist and I want my song mastered and I send it to Lander, or I send it to whoever, online, or any of these different things, down to, now we're getting into a position that really scares me, where there's a program that's out now called Uber Duck AI, which you'll see. I posted the thing about the guy that did the one about Kendrick. There was one recently that was posted about Kanye, where we're questioning, what does our voice mean, or what does our creativity mean when that can be sort of replicated by a computer, or just the mere facts of it and the law of it, to be able to ask what needs to change. Because right now in the United States, you as Royce cannot put a patent or a copyright on your voice in and of itself. So that's a problem that needs to change. Those are very tangible, workable items that we need to go to the government and say, look, I need to be able to copyright my voice. As it stands right now, you can, if you were to make a song, Royce, you can copyright that song. The law says that it uses the word sequence. There has to be a sequence of words for you to copyright, like a speech or any of those things you can copyright. But your actual voice itself, which someone doesn't need your permission. I can just take your acapellas, feed it into UberDuck, and now it not only replicates your voice, but also your flow. So, there are examples out there of Biggie and Tupac records that, were made yesterday, or, those sort of things, the legal aspect of that. And that's the stuff that's been on my mind, and really dominating just my thought process, and me going back and reading, old books that were predicting where we were going to be at certain times, and seeing which ones were, Michio Kaku has a famous book where he predicts, in the 90s where we're going to be, and he's almost dead on as to when AI was going to come in and what it was going to do to just the creativity or our business, or just, just ideas about that.
Yeah.
That's the main thing for me, on top of just, being someone who wants to be up on the information. I want to actively be in it so that I can affect it.
Yeah, no, I love that, because if you're not in it, you can't have that impact on the direction it's going to go, how this affects the industry, the artistry. No, I love that. Royce,
Yeah.
on your side, basically that question of like, where did you get to the point where you're kind of considering these bigger picture things with your community beyond just the music itself?
Just many, many years of being in the game, and kind of like following the same, I guess, blueprint is the word I can use. We went many years
Yeah.
following a certain blueprint when we were dealing with physical copies. Then we made a slow transition into, like the whole LimeWire thing, and then the ringtone downloads, and like I was one of those guys who like complained first, and then I jumped on it after it was, after MySpace was already up and running. You know what I mean? Like I was just getting a computer, so like I just noticed the trend of like all of these different things that kind of like impact the world in a way where it forces you to get down or lay down. You know what I mean? And I'm real big on longevity. So right now I see something. Well, I've been seeing it for a minute, but I'm not one of those guys who like, dives into stuff without getting the information, or walks into somebody else's wheelhouse, not humble. Like I have all the answers. So I've been noticing this, the whole Web3 thing, and I heard Guru break down very eloquently, like the whole VR thing, in the way that it's going to all kind of come together. And that was the first time that I heard it broken down in layman terms, where I actually understood it. And, I just see an opportunity to be able to engage with the people who truly follow me without having to get myself in a bunch of trouble arguing and comments on social media. It's a very easy way for me to kind of just like alienate the trolls and just focus on the people who, like, who are focused on me, and be a little bit more in control with just building community, and be a little bit more intentional with the way that I engage with just the people. You know what I mean? Like kind of like controlling my energy in a way. On top of that, I
No, I
see the
love that.
direction that everything is going. I'm watching everything that Illmind is doing. I've been on Illmind forever. You know what I mean? I've been on Guru forever. I'm watching what they're doing, and I'm just, I turned into a student, and I'm tired of giving all my music to record labels and
Yeah.
streaming platforms.
No, I love that. And you've talked about that a good bit where it comes to being more intentional with your community. You've talked a lot about wanting to have to be able to define the space better, right? To control, like, well, to not be controlled, right? To have creative freedom, really. Um, it's not even about, this idea of being controlling. It's the creative freedom to make the space that fits your music, that fits your community, rather than to have that space defined for you.
Illmind, this is Keno again. And it's funny you said that, Guru, about the voice trademarking, because people would say me and Royce sound a lot alike. I'm a little older, so I would assume he sounds like me, though.
You a lot older. You a lot older. You way older.
I'm not that. 2 years, bro. 2 years. Stop it. Stop it. That
20
being
years.
said,
20 years, bro.
Illmind.
Well, yeah, that's a great point that you make, and I want to make sure that everybody understands like exactly what I'm saying and why that's so important, because it's like eventually we are going to have, you know, estates of very famous people, and even not so famous people start doing things with the voice of their deceased person. Like, there could be a whole new Bob Marley, whatever, and his kids should be able to benefit off of that if someone is using his likeness, or the voice should become another initial in the NIL, name, image, and likeness. You know what I'm saying? It should become another thing in that. So that's why it's just so important for me, because for an artist, of that in music, that's voice is your instrument. That is who you are. That's your identity. That and the intellectual property that you create by writing and creating songs. So the same way that song can be passed down, or the rights to those songs can be passed down to future generations, I think is needed. Like in everything. Like there's going to be actors who are going to be brought back to life that have passed. All of these sort of things are going to be are things that we need to think about and set the law up. But sometimes the legal aspects takes a little too long, and people don't really know
Oh
exactly
yeah.
what they're doing. It's like when the music business. I was working at Def Jam, reluctantly. Like I never wanted to work at a record company, but Hove asked me in 2003, like, come up in A&R, and this is the exact moment where I'm going to the higher ups, and I'm like, literally, like, how are we going to sell records when records are free? Like, I can download any song that I want right now. Or me then not pushing enough when they were like, oh, well, we're going to go with Steve Jobs, and that's where the industry's going. And I'm like, so we're the universal, forget universal music, just universal in general. Nobody in this whole company knows how to write a website. It's HTML. Like, why are we giving our business over to Homeboy? That was a big concern of mine, because I'm looking at it and knowing what's going on and still being like, okay, you're trying to sue Napster, but tomorrow it'll be called Papster, and it'll be right back up in a different thing. You're gonna sue them and take that. It's impossible for you to stop me sending another person an email. Like, it really showed us what our thing is, and it wasn't a piece of plastic, it wasn't the vinyl, it was actually the intellectual property that's on those delivery systems. We just changed the delivery system to something that everybody can get now. That was a huge thing. So these being in early and adopting it early allows you to see the playing field a lot bigger. And there's a huge point that I want to interject, that was made famous by Jaron Lanier, which is this thing called lock and code, which is you start to build a system on something, and it's going to get so far that you can't remove the bottom. Like the bottom thing, like we program computers in zeros and ones. That part can't be removed anymore because there's too much stuff built on it. World governments will go down, right? So we're locked into that. It would take so much for you to be like, hey, there's a different way to do this. the way we build transistors, all of those different things are not the only way that they can be done. This is three guys' idea at Bell Labs, and we ran with it, but we're locked into that. So we could get into that same thing with what we're experiencing now, with VR, with AR, and AR is another thing for the people in the room that may not understand. VR is, you're totally in the goggles, or you put the goggles on, which eventually will get better. They'll get to glass sizes and eventually become contact lenses if you want, that sort of thing. But AR is going to be another thing where it's like you have on that same pair of glasses and you're walking down the street in Manhattan and you're on Fifth Avenue and a sign comes out that says, "Oh, we got sales on Jordans in here this time." Like our whole world is about to be like changed
Hey
because of
Google,
this.
can you for those of us who may not be as savvy as you, can you break down AR and VR, what they are, what they mean?
Yes, virtual reality, like I said, is you put on the goggles, you go into a different world. Illmind has a great space inside of VR where he has producers come, they talk to each other. There's an AV there. It's not your physical self, but it's going to get as good as anything else, to where, like, on the video games when you're playing, you can make the character look like you. Eventually it's going to be take a picture of yourself and we'll make the character so it will look like you, sort of thing. That's VR. You're totally in a world. And there's many different forms. And what I don't want people to misconstrue is just because someone was smart enough to name their company Meta doesn't mean that that is the entirety of the metaverse. That is just one company inside of it. But it was an ill move. AR is augmented reality. What that means is that you're looking at the real world, but eventually you're going to be able to walk into, let's say, a business meeting, or let's say you're at a dinner or a conference or whatever. And the same way the Terminator had the little words going down as he's analyzing what's going. Okay, that's about. Okay, this thing fits me. Okay, da da da. It's literally going to be able to do that. So you could like be talking to someone that you could possibly do a deal with, and their Wikipedia page can be scrolling down just your glasses, and you could be like, "Oh, so I see you like such and such." All that small talk, all the information that you will go home and research about somebody, that's going to be in your glasses. Augmented reality is you still looking at the real world, but you're getting supplemented information. You could be driving your car, and instead of you having to look at your phone to find the directions, a blue line is just going to appear that says "Get off on this exit." Those sort of things. And then there's what we have is which is 360. That can be inside where you film. And you can look around the whole room. You can tell stories with that. But 360 is, and there's very cheap 360 cameras out there, but you just stick a camera up and it films everything all around you. So those are the major differences.
Yeah, so I'm curious. Obviously, there's so many options right now in terms of the technology, in terms of what's possible, what's happening. But I feel like a lot of the stuff we actually use every day hasn't changed a whole lot, right? Like there's the headroom has opened up, right? The opportunity to do more with the technology is growing exponentially. But I'd be curious, and Anson, if you want to start us off, I'd be curious to know, what are your thoughts on like what's missing from the current platforms? Like, I think it's interesting. Maybe there's two elements to this. Why have these communication platforms become so important? I mean, like, Ansem, you're a trader, right? You're a Web3 dude, and yet your content, your community is a huge part of how you're connecting with people right now. What do you feel like might be missing from that, and why haven't these platforms changed?
I think I would say that there's two parts to it. The first, I would say that we're still, I think, early on the consumer side of applications in crypto. Like if you go back a few years ago, 2018, which I guess like 5 years ago now, but there was really like no financial activity, or at least not a lot of financial activity on Ethereum. Like I think we went from like a couple, like probably less than 100 million on Ethereum to now like 50 billion, like spread across all these different smart contract platforms. That's only been in 5 years. So you got to think in like 5 years from now, and now that we have this infrastructure in place, what are all the other different applications that are going to be built on top? And I think you're seeing a lot of that happen currently right now, and it's been in process like the past few years. But I would say like one of the main drivers is going to be, I think Guru talked about it a good bit. It's like educating people on why this stuff is important, and like what the advantages that fans have for interacting with artists digitally in this way. Because I think it's clear that everybody is going more and more digital. Like everybody's on their phones, everybody's online a ton more, and that's just increasingly going to keep happening as we move forward. So it's like, how do artists take advantage of that in the best way, and like where does crypto fit into that whole equation? But I think it's happening. It's happening slowly. I think that the aspect of like fan direct experiences with artists, in the same way that you have people who are extremely excited about concerts and like live performances, you're going to have people excited about those same type of performances but digitally. And now with NFTs, people are going to be able to have unique like digital collectibles that of proof that they were there. So in the same way that you used to collect like records in your house or whatever, or like show that you were at this show, now it's really easy to show and prove to people I was at this digital show, and I have proof that I was like a huge fan of this person wherever, like so many years ago. And I think that's going to be huge in the future, just for like showing your fandom and also like bringing those communities together and having those like tighter relationships.
Yeah, one thing we had talked about was this idea of in passage, because you can kind of be present with artists, with other creators, other people in the community. This idea of like, you don't see 99% of what goes on in the music production process, right? You just see the 3 minutes of the track that comes out, right? If that. And it would be interesting to have like a music collection where only people who were there, right, who were there for the mixing, who took like who were like present through the process, and kind of like either were live in the studio or whatever it may be, virtually, right, could get access to some of those tracks, right? The idea that like people would have to be participating in the process, have to be thoughtful and cognizant of what goes into the track in order to get something out of it, right? So Illmind, I'd be curious from your perspective, just with the technology right now, we've got this huge headroom, right? There's so much we can do with, ownership, with immersion. Why haven't the platforms changed a bunch? And what do you think's missing right now? Where do you think platforms can go, should go? What are your thoughts on how we're interacting with our communities?
Yeah. So just to speak on what you just last said, so there's actually a couple platforms that are starting to entertain that technology where now you have sort of like Twitch, a Twitch type platform where
Right.
you can live stream, and then instead of people donating and tipping, they can mint the actual video that's happening on screen. So like, let's say I'm like making a beat on stream, and it becomes like a smash like 2-3 years from now, you can own the actual video NFT of me creating it from scratch. You know what I mean? So stuff like that is super interesting to me. But I always default to like this idea of like, okay, who is this technology benefiting? Is it benefiting the creators? Is it benefiting the consumer? Or is it benefiting both? Right? And for some reason, I still can't think of a more immersive fan to artist experience than like meeting them in person and hanging out.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Which is what we kind of have always done. So in this really bizarre, weird way, we're building these different ways to like connect and get closer, when really we've always been close in that way, you know what I mean, where we get to meet people in person. So it's very interesting. I'm keeping my eye on stuff that like makes our lives easier. So like what Royce and Guru were talking about earlier, where I can be like a huge fan of an artist, and plug in my VR goggles and like be in the same room with them, and be able to walk around the room that they're in, is hella cool. And will definitely create like a deeper connection, especially people that don't have that luxury of like seeing you in person. You can have somebody that's like in the other side of the world feel like they're right next to you. That stuff is super cool to me. So I think it's just like more stuff like that. And then in terms of like the music production, I mean, Guru pretty much said it all. Like the AR, the AI shit is just so crazy. It's exciting, but like very, very scary. at the
Yep.
same time. So I don't want to repeat what Guru said, but from a music production perspective, I do still think that we still have a ways to go to where AI platforms are like creating like really really good beats that are like actually usable. Some of them are cool, but I think we still have a ways to go. But the inevitable is the inevitable. I think that at some point in the future, whether that's like 5, 10, or like 50 years from now, I think, with the push of a button, you'll have a song ready to go that's going to sound like really really good, and that's scary to me. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and I love what you're saying about connecting into the real world and how that's kind of the fundamental thing that we're all pivoting around.
yeah,
And
yeah, it's like the the real life is the ultimate HD. So it's like that,
the
like
human
that's
eye.
our fucking VR glass.
Yeah.
It's just it's always been right in front of us. So it is sort of interesting. It's like we're moving forward, but we're also kind of moving backwards a little bit.
Well, and here's how
It depends. Can I jump in real quick?
Please.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword, right? So I'll give you a prime example in music and then put it in life. So when this thing of, oh well, we can now record in a computer and I can send you a song and I can do it in my house and all these things that were supposed to make my experience as an engineer faster and better, there's dangers in the fact that it slows down my process sometimes, because it's like, okay, well, everybody doesn't have the same computer with the same plugins. That's one problem, right? So I get a session and it's just like, oh, I got to go out and buy this particular thing. Like, luckily I'm in a situation where I can go buy it, but what if I'm a budding engineer who doesn't have the money to just always go do that? The second thing is that like Illmind said, it removed us from all being in the same room. So, I don't want to say back in the day, but, back in the day, like say if I'm doing a record for Royce, I would go in, Royce would come to the session, his A&R would probably come to the session, the producers at the session, all of the questions that we need to answer in terms of like, hey, turn the snare up. Can you put a little effect on this? This was supposed to sound like this, are all done in that room because we're all there because he paid $2,000 to rent the Hit Factory that day. So everybody's there. Now I get to a point where I mix the record, I send it to Royce, he has notes. I send it to his A&R, he has notes. I send it to the producer, he has notes. Those notes could be going against each other, which is a decision that could have been made right then in the studio. I don't want to be long-winded, but you get the point of what I'm saying. Because we disconnected, that process that used to take us 4 or 5 hours, now I don't know where everybody's at. I don't know what they're listening to it on. Like they could be listening through the phone. They could be, and I'm like, you're listening to my mix through the phone? Like, all like all of those things start to slow you down, and that can transfer into like real life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these things are something that, as much as it may automate something, it can also slow us down in certain areas.
No, I totally agree. Well, and
Amen.
that's why yeah. As we've been building this stuff out, the biggest thing for me is I feel like it's all a matter of priorities, right? Because I don't think any of us disagrees. I love what you're saying, Guru and Illmind, where about the physical experience, and it's always going to be this balance, this double-edged sword, where yeah, like just being together is better, right? Being live at the concert's better. Being able to be like present for the actual designed acoustic experience is better. All of those things for human relationships, being present is better. But what's fascinating about technology, because I have this technology where I can work remotely with my team all across the US and internationally, I can be present with my kids, with my family, right? Artists have the opportunity to grow in their career without having to be on the road, 24/7, right? Without having to, leave their families the same way. There's a unique opportunity. So it is this double-edged sword. And also, there are a lot of underreached people in our communities, people who, shoot, we've got food deserts in our cities where people don't have access to like a legit grocery store or like real produce.
Right.
And so there's these silos where people's best key, their only transportation into new opportunities, education, advancement opportunities, into a unique career is going to be through their phone, right? Because they might still have a cell phone, or at the worst, they can go to the library, right? There's
Right.
something there to teleport them into this space where we're
Oh,
all connected.
don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. All across the world, everybody has. I did a scholarship in Langa, in South Africa, right? And you notice that like people don't have running water, but every
Right.
single person has a cell phone. It
Yeah.
may not be just an iPhone, it'll be whatever. And they
Right.
are
Right.
getting really good at like finding little pieces of whatever to build phones. Like it's people in the hood in
Wow.
South Africa that build phones. And
Yep.
so everybody has that access. And I agree with the in person, but I also too agree with the information that we can get through
Right.
our phone or
Right.
you know, me going to a seminar that may have to do with, I don't know, financial literacy on a very
Yeah.
specific topic or any of those things. You know, of course, the connections that we can make online to sort of like quote unquote find our tribe, you know, is a huge thing. Like Royce said, like
Yeah.
finding his exact fan base, asking them a question of what would y'all like to see from me, or you know, it becomes a better space than having to deal with like haters online or comments from people that you know, just
Right.
literally hearing somebody's voice or seeing them or having a conversation with them virtually is a lot better than trying to go back and forth, especially when you have a difference of opinion.
Oh, I love that. Well, and that makes me think of this idea that like in person, and this is maybe one of the areas we're lagging behind on traditional platforms, right? Like Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Um, is that in the real world, you have this opportunity to prove yourself, right? And part of it might just be the way you walk, the way you hold yourself, the way you talk. People can kind of prove that they have something that they want to say something, that they want to contribute, that they want to lift up the community in one way or another, right? You can see by somebody's demeanor and the way they talk, but online you don't really know. It's really hard to kind of like prove yourself, right? And so either you have to have like um, basically a following of some kind, right? There's weird different rituals that we've established online for how do you quote unquote prove yourself, right? Um, so it's interesting thinking about this opportunity people might have to literally prove themselves on chain, on blockchain, right? To prove that, I put in the time here listening to these tracks. I put in the time here following you through this part of your career, whatever it may be. But there's an opportunity here as the platforms advance to create better relationships just because we have consensus on chain as to, who's put in the time, who really cares about the community.
Now, it's a great point for those that don't understand, and you know, again, trying to break it down for the actual person. You know, that ability, that thing that we say in this world is like we don't question anything, we prove it. You know what I'm saying? So you always have the ability to go back and prove exactly, you know, who has done what, where that thing came from. You know, that's a huge part of it, of being able to prove certain things, and then opening up to, like Roy said, different ideas that even he may not know that his fan base wants from him. You know, you have that ability to do it direct without a record company. The record companies themselves are going to consistently look at information and try to keep up with certain things that may not make sense to us as creatives as to like why a record company does this thing. But it's just like I'll give you an example of one of my artists, like say a Ruben Vincent or a Rhapsody, who don't necessarily want to be on some of these platforms. But if your marketing person is saying to you like, this is the new hot thing, these are where the eyeballs are, you have to be on this thing, they're kind of just doing their job. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if he necessarily wants to be on Twitch, but it's just like you
Right.
have to at this point. Like there's no way around it until something else new comes in. You know, and that's part of the thing of like the dog chasing the tail, because tomorrow it could be something else. We've seen, you know, huge platforms come in and leave, you know, by the popularity of the people, depending on wherever we are, or something new comes in, you know, then they're going to switch their whole marketing to that thing that has all the eyeballs. So it's a balanced thing of the creativity is there, and like you said, the bandwidth is there for us to do whatever we want to do, but it's also a thing of how do we get above the noise? Because when you democratize everything, it's the same thing as saying like, yeah, before I did have to kind of get signed, or at least as a hobbyist be serious enough to like go out and buy equipment to be able to
Right.
record. And it's like now, because everyone has access to it and can do it, it's so much noise that it's like, hey, there's 100,000 songs per day being uploaded to a streaming service, right? So it's just like, if I we need the tastemakers. We need somebody to be like a Royce to be like, yo, if you like me, check out this person, because this person is somebody I'm vibing with, because it's just too much out there. It's the same thing in photography. It's the same thing in art. It's the same thing. Like all the creative spaces are, it's too much noise out there because everybody can do it at
So
this point.
so my question is, Guru, this is Kino. Is it so my question is, I think, to you based on what you just said, and then to Royce and Illmind, because I think you guys are trying to um, go a different direction with the idea of community, right? If when you're on Instagram, when obviously you're on Twitter or any of these other social media platforms, you are instantly in their community, right?
Right.
Um, Twitch, right? And you're right. That's where the marketing execs come in, because they're just looking for the low hanging fruit, which is who's paying the most attention in what space.
Yeah.
How important then is building your own community in your own ecosystem? And then second part of the question is, or first part is, I guess, what does community mean to you? Like when you think of community in the space, what does that mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
And then how important is it to start to build your own community within these spaces as we go
Yeah.
into Web3?
It's super important. Number one, so my definition of community are people with shared interests or people whose lives affect each other, right? So when I say shared interest, that may be, I could be in the Star Trek community because that's a shared interest of mine. I could be in the music community because that's a shared interest of mine. But inside of those, there are subsets or sub communities, should I say, because you could be into music, but like what type of music? So you may not be completely into country music. That's a whole other thing. But then someone who's an engineer in the country space may be in my community of engineers because we all deal with the same equipment, the same ideas, the same thing. There's also a part of community that are people that are around you that you may not have the same shared interests in. And that's part of the negative part of what we see online, of people who are arguing back and forth, most likely in a political sense, right? We do it a lot with like hip hop, with like lyrics and who's the best MC and like all those sort of things. But in a political sense, there's people who are a community because they argue with each other back and forth, back and forth. And the algorithms are going to notice what your biggest interaction is. So people always say, well, why is this thing forcing me negative information? It's because you've responded to the negative information. If somebody gives you a compliment, any of us who are artists will look at it, we'll put up something, or say Illmind puts up a song, and somebody goes, oh, this is incredible, this is incredible, this is great, I love this, I love this. You're going to just maybe hit the like button, versus like if somebody goes, you're trash as a producer, everything you've done is horrible, and then you'll be like, what? Who the fuck are you talking to? Like, you're going to start interacting with that one. You know what I'm saying? Because the negative pulls it out of you. So that's a part of community. So I think that's a huge thing of what Royce is talking about, where now you have the ability to build your own space and to give that space a feel. It goes back to the old thing that I used to hate in the record company. When I worked at Def Jam, there was a literal pamphlet, a book that we had that said, okay, here's the 3-month rollout before we put out a single or an album. Here's what we need to do. Here's what all the departments need. Here are the dates that they needed. And I would sit in the meetings and I'd be like, yo, why do we have the same rollout for Mariah Carey, Ludacris, MOP, and like they're all completely different? So what you're trying to force on MOP may not work for them. Like, you have to find out what their fan base wants. That's them building their own community. Mariah Carey's fan base is going to be completely different than Ludacris's fan base. But we made them all do the exact same thing on the exact same dates and use the formula sort of to roll all those albums out. Now we can kind of throw that book out for artists and be like, okay, now you get to design your own book. Your fan base may not be on a Twitch. It just may not be that. You may, and I'm using Royce because he's in here, where it's just like, okay, Royce exists in this great space where he has fans that are literally 55 years old, all the way down to people who are 18 years old. So that's going to be different than somebody else that's just starting out. So it's like, okay, how do I appease my fans who have been with me since the very beginning, or who have said, you know, I rock with you, who have bought merch and who have bought the music, and also too like a younger generation that's like, oh, you know what? I just heard about you through this, and I went back and looked you up on YouTube and like watched all your old videos, and that's the whole thing of being able to build that community and being able to see those people that you may not think about. So I don't know if Royce knows if I don't know if he's aware of my 18-year-old and 19-year-old students that I have, you know what I'm saying, at my school that love his music. He may not be thinking about that particular thing, but building your own community will allow you, number one, to interact with those people. Number two, the information goes to you. The information we used to like be really big on was like, okay, we need the person's email. That way, if we do an email blast, we know exactly who it is. This is the person now where you don't have to put down the credit card, you know, and lock into Apple or whatever other system that we're talking about. They're direct with you and what you want to create. That's the reason why it's so important, and locking into your fan base.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Royce,
That's beautiful,
Illmind.
beautifully
Well,
put.
real
Oh,
quick too, one of those things you said, talking about like making everybody subscribe to the same rollout, makes me think of the modern algorithms on YouTube, on Twitter. Creators are constantly talking about how they are locked into putting certain characteristics on their thumbnails, or like everything down to like what words they can put in the thumbnail or what their facial expression looks like in order to get their video out to their subscribers, right? It's like reminds me perfectly of that, where we are being tailored, the creators are being tailored to the consumer and to this generic idea of consumer based off of an algorithm, rather than being able to actually be fundamentally creative.
Bro.
So
And I know I don't want to take up all the time talking, but this thing just touched my heart, because it's like just last week I had somebody from the label come back to me and was like, "Goo, maybe we should start taking the intros off of certain songs because it needs to jump straight to this thing for TikTok." And I'm like, "Yo, like so now TikTok is determining the creativity of how we make the song,
yes,
or the
yes,
popular thing of people are now speeding up your song to do a dance to it on TikTok, and the algorithm is not reading that that's your song, which means in essence you won't get paid from that play because it's a different pitch, it's a different key,
right.
so the record company is coming back to me now and going, "Goo, can you speed? Let's do versions of the song sped up." And I'm like, this is completely changing. You know, I'm trying to give the background story so it's not nonsense. They want, you know, what I mean, the
Right,
artist to
right.
get paid, but it's like, yo, now you're trying to change the BPM of my song, and I'm talking about like a song that's like 95, making it like 150. Like,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
well, they're penny grabbing now, right? They're penny grabbing. They're looking at every DSP um that they can collect from, and they're
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
penny grab and see exactly what's best for the bottom line as a corporation, right? I think what you guys are doing is you guys are creating your own systems now that allows you to make the best decisions for not only your art, right, or content or projects that you're a part of, but for the community who really wants it as it's been created for them to hear or see, right? You don't change the smile on the Mona Lisa because someone can't doesn't like the smile and the way it is, right? You guys
yeah,
are being
yeah,
forced to change your art to appease a general public, not even necessarily
yeah.
your internal fan base or your internal community, but a general public. Um, Illmind, Royce, what does community mean to you, and what made you guys decide to create platforms where you could interact with your community directly?
I'll go first, yo, because I don't want to forget a lot of the stuff that Guru said, because I want to second everything that he said, and like going back to a point that you made earlier, Guru, when you was talking about Ruben Vincent and Rhapsody may not want to go on certain sites, like if it's just known as the thing to do, like at that point it just feels like work. And late, like I used to love Instagram. I use Instagram for an example. I used to love Instagram. I still think it's cool, but like when I hit 1 million followers on Instagram, I just start getting like a bunch of bots in my comments section. You know what I mean? And then I started noticing that I would be going live, and then like a lot of people wouldn't even get the notification that I'm going live. So it's just kind of like I just started to feel like I was at war against the algorithm. You know what I mean? As opposed to just being able to be social and it being fun. That's when it starts to feel like work. You know what I mean? So it's just like if I can't have fun doing it, then I can't really do it. You know what I mean? So it's just like
Yeah.
in order to be able to weed that out, I got to figure out a way to get fulfillment out of it. And the only thing that has given me fulfillment throughout the whole pandemic to now is being able to engage in a community atmosphere. You know what I'm saying? Like,
And
Yeah.
Royce, what happens when the algorithm changes? We've seen it so many times. So like you've got on and it's like, okay, I got to 1 million. You see the bots, you see what everybody's doing, and it's like, okay, well, let me figure this out. And then they change the
yeah,
algorithm on you, and it's just like, wow, like, okay, I spent now I got to change again and relearn again. And it's like, no, with your own, you control it.
exactly, exactly. Because it's like why let you access every follower that you have? Then advertisers will advertise with you. You know what I mean? So essentially, it's you versus the platform, unless it's a situation where you can kind of control the community, and kind of like moderate the way that things go. And you can also be as creative as you can possibly be. Think outside the box. Engage with people, get ideas from them. I love listening. I love listening because I feel like the people who are listening to music today are like totally different from how the listeners used to be of yesterday. You know what I'm saying? Like the fans are becoming more savvy now. I think that's where a lot of the categories come from. A lot of the categories come from streaming platforms and shit like that. But a lot of fans, I feel like, are already programmed to put people in spaces in their mind. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm considered lyrical rap. That was just brought to my attention about 7 years ago. I was fucking shocked, Guru. Oh, I'm a lyrical rap. Okay, cool. I didn't know that was a category. I thought, you know what I mean? Like, so it's
Yeah,
just like, that's the way that my son and them look at the shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of like what it is. And then watching my youngins, my super youngins, play Roblox for hours and hours and hours.
hmm
I'm like, damn, y'all don't even
hmm
care about the graphics no more? It just look like little box heads and legs just running around in and out of houses and not doing nothing. But they be like locked
yeah,
in for hours and hours and hours. I wish I had $1 for every dollar I spent on Roblox money so they can buy shit within the within the
Robux.
world. You know what I mean? So it's just
yeah,
like, or watching my daughters look at YouTube on a big screen TV, watching somebody else's daughter open up presents, and they think that that's interesting.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's just like,
yeah,
bruh,
yeah.
boy, is this world a changing.
Well, and that's a great point you're making because the first experience I had with that was my son watching someone else play a video game online. I mean, on YouTube, and I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
so you're watching someone else play the game? You're not playing? Like what? Like, and that became a huge thing. So it's just like again, it's the platforms are dictating sort of where we're going, and we don't even realize how much it dictates where we're going. So that's another part of why to build your own thing. And then two, another thing we have not touched on is that when you're building it, you build it in your way, meaning that a lot of these, you'll hear the thing about racism, and a lot of that is built into the algorithms without the people even knowing. And it's because people are writing these programs in their personal style, meaning what makes sense to them. What are things that they like? What would be the outcome in a situation, the way that they would deal with it, which may not be the way that every community deals with it. And that's not just a
Right.
racial thing. That crosses all
It's a
types of
community
lines in
thing.
terms of community, ethnicity,
Culture.
all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Il,
I
Il,
love that.
Illmind, how does that play in community, play into the role of the knights
Yeah,
thing you're doing?
yeah. So yeah, I mean, basically everything that Royce and Guru said, I don't want to repeat. They pretty much hit everything on the nose in terms of community. But for me, for many years since the beginning, I always just kind of had this chip on my shoulder. Like when I started making beats, it was like most of us, it was me in my mom's basement with a keyboard and no money and a dream and like, dollar bin records, and I kind of got lost in my craft. And when I started to evolve into hey, like, how do I find like people to work with? How do I find rappers? How do I find singers? Blah blah blah. This is pre-internet, or the very very beginning stages of social media and the internet, and it was always so hard. I didn't know what to do. There was no manual. It was very confusing. No YouTube tutorials or anything. So it sort of became part of my DNA to share whatever information I learned through those years to pay forward to the next young kid who decides to take on the same path and have to go through the same thing. And so when I started just really engaging with my community, I realized that a lot of my community are creative people. So I did. We did. I used to do these like monthly producer showcases in New York back in 2007, 2008, called BLAP, BLAP, and at the time it stood for Beats Love Alcohol Party. So we would like rent out these like bars and clubs, and we would just have
Alcohol.
producers come in and play beats. Yeah, and so we did that for years, and then I started my podcast, which was a producer podcast back in 2011. Rest in peace, Combat Jack. He kind of put the battery in my back to like start a podcast before people even really knew what it was. And so I've always really just been into creating these activations that bring people together and bring community together and bring like-minded people together. So when I caught wind of like the power of blockchain and Web3 and metaverse and all that stuff, my first default was, how do I create a project that is an extension of what I've been doing, which is bringing people together, bring creative people together to create music and to get to know each other and hopefully nurture lifelong relationships in the process. And that's exactly what we want to do and what we're trying to do with the Squatter Nights project. So it's been a year, and that's kind of the north star for me with any Web3 project. Is this benefiting a community? Is it bringing us closer together? And more importantly, is it fun? Are we having fun doing it?
Illmind you kind of underselling it too. I want to tell a story of just when we building on that topic of building your own. Um,
Yep.
I don't know if you even remember, but there was a time when you made your own app to track the sales of what was going on with your sounds and things of that nature. So we were at a party, I think, standing at a bar, and it was like somebody was like, "Oh, I'm your biggest fan." And it was funny, like you did it in a real cordial way. And then when that person walked away, you were like, "Nah, Goo, this is actually my biggest fan in this area." And you pulled up like your personal app that you made, and it showed like how many people had bought what area they lived in. Like it had this, I was so impressed because it had this complete breakdown. And then to also find out that like if there was like the top purchaser in a certain city, like you would take that person out to dinner. Like that goes directly to the heart of what we're talking about building your own community and having all the information for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Yeah, man. Man, I can't believe you remember that, dude. Yeah, that's always been a big thing for me, and that's why the all this technology excites me, because we can really really use it to our advantage, and when we do good with it, man, really amazing things can happen. So, but yeah, it's crazy, Guru, that you remember that might have been like 2012, maybe 2013.
I was just so impressed with it, man. It just spoke at that time of like how going direct to consumer, how you can utilize that. You know what I mean? And that was just a huge thing. And it wasn't something that was like you reinvented the wheel. Like we always say, hip hop didn't invent anything, but it reinvented everything. I think the way you reinvented the way of interacting with fans and people who have actually purchased things. It was just I was just super impressed with it.
Means a lot, bro.
I got a question, and I think Ansem, I want you to answer this first. So historically, there has been one N word that has been taboo for anybody to say. Recently, the new taboo N word is NFT. NFT, Ansem, bad, good. What's the pros? What's the cons? And how can it help the next creatives within the music and entertainment space?
That's a hilarious way to phrase that question. But I agree. I think like the name NFT, I honestly don't know how the media has done such a good job of giving it a bad rep. I feel like a lot of it has came from, well, some of it came from like the gaming community, because they really don't like how like the thesis around putting microtransactions in games. They don't really want to have to like pay for content in games, and there's some pushback against NFTs causing that to happen when crypto games implement stuff like that. But just generally, I really am not sure why like the general media is so against NFTs. I know I've seen some arguments that they're like bad for the environment, and Ethereum is like bad for the environment. But there's not those arguments for all of these other technologies that also use a ton of like electricity. I will say that there's definitely no really reason for the negativity to exist. NFTs are just digital collectibles. They're really just non-fungible tokens, means um, like a token that's unique in its own way. There's no replicas of it. It's really just a digital collectible. So it can be either music, it can be image, it can be video, it can be essentially anything that you store on chain, like on Ethereum or on Solana or any other smart contract platform. So the way that artists can use these NFTs to their advantage is, say you have like a live show, a concert, and you want to interact with all the fans that went to that show. You could have, say, a QR code that fans could scan at that concert, and when they scan that code, they get an NFT sent to their wallet, essentially of proof that they were at that show. So then later, if artists want to reward people or give people certain exclusive content that were at that venue, they could use people who have those NFTs, and that's provably like verifiable on chain. You could send them, give them whatever like content or exclusive content that you want. That's like one way artists can use NFTs. There's also, I think, what really creative ways that you can share the ownership of your music. I know Royce talked about how like doesn't really like sharing a lot of your IP with these record labels and other large companies. And NFTs kind of allow you the ways that you can share like ownership of all of your music or your content or your videos with fans and like with people who interact with you on a daily basis. So there's a ton of different creative things that you can do. I really don't know how the narrative got around there so bad, but I'm curious to hear what the general consensus is, like why you asked that.
Well, real
Well,
quick, I want to add something to that because we got a question in the comments as well. It said, and this is from Gway, who said it's specifically for young Guru, but I think I'd be interested to hear everyone else speak to this as well. He said that he went to Georgia Tech. I worked heavily with EarSketch, which you helped build, Guru. What do you think the next steps are in educating young people, specifically minorities, about this necessary and lucrative bridge into Web3? So like it goes to this question of like, okay, there clearly is a bias, right? Ansem speaking to how like some of that bias might come from the gaming space, but like how do we overcome that in bringing people, underreached people, minorities even, into these new technologies and creating opportunities here?
One, that's ill because Georgia Tech needs more credit, man. They like like Georgia Tech got some of the most brilliant minds down there in terms of engineering and that space. I'm rattling, but it's
Ansem,
amazing
how'd you
what
get
comes.
in there then?
I'm all right, man. I'm kind of smart.
No, it really does. But to answer your question, one, the negative comes from media, and let's be very clear that governments are extremely scared of this, right?
Yep.
The deregulation part scares people, and then it also exposes, should I say, like what money really is in terms of trust, right? Like that's all money really is. Money is trust. It's this thing that I have in my pocket is a piece of paper. But if I go to the corner store, I could buy a loaf of bread with it because that person trusted as well. You know what I'm saying? Everybody
deep with
accepts
this
it.
one, Guru. You're going deep.
Yeah.
About to start talking about central banks. I know where you're going.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And not to, it's not conspiracy theory. It's not none of that. It's just money is trust. You know what I'm saying? That's all it is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if I have the ability to go, okay, if I'm now in crypto and I could book a hotel with that, and I could buy a loaf of bread with that, and I can buy gas with that, and like that's when it will be accepted. So it's really showing it to the youth to show them exactly what the advantages are, but you starting to get into messing with people's money. So it's like that's why you'll see there's a line on an album that's not out yet that I'm doing with Smoke Dizza, where he says something 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 until Sleepy Joe come for the crypto. You know what I mean? Meaning the government is going to start to look to regulate all these things, and that was the whole point of decentralization and deregulation. So that's why you see the pushback, or that's why you see and certain people can say whatever they want about certain things that fail, but we just watched the whole bank fail last week.
Absolutely.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
risk has nothing to do with it.
yeah,
And
exactly.
Well, can I summarize that real quick too?
Yeah,
Because I
absolutely.
feel like what you just said was when people can get what they want with NFTs, with crypto, they'll adopt it. It's as simple as that, right? Because with money, it's like you don't question, oh, well, whose face is on this bill? Like, who printed this? Like, is this fiat legitimate? It's just like, no, if you bring it to the grocery store, they'll give you what you want. If
Yeah,
you bring it to Best Buy, you'll get your Beats, right?
yeah,
And so if people can actually, so part of the problem with NFTs right now is most people can't get what they want with NFTs,
right,
right? There's
right,
nothing good here for them, right?
right.
And as soon as people can get what they want with crypto, with NFTs, it won't really matter. I mean, just to be totally frank, right? It won't matter what the philosophy is behind it because it's just trust that I'll get the things that I want by being able to use this medium. This will help me get the things that are important to me.
Right.
but you know what? To take that one step further, Lex, it's not just people, right? It's a certain sector of people in this country. We don't necessarily understand that there is a massive population that is underbanked or
Mm,
unbanked at all, right?
right, right.
A massive population, right?
Yes,
We
yes.
we take that for granted in America. For those of us that are in the space that's in America, we take that for granted. The reality is there are many people, majority of people of color and women who are in Africa and India and China, and countries all over the world where they don't have access to a banking system at all,
Right.
right? And so if it's not the cash, the fiat currency of that country,
Mhm.
which a lot of these people, depending on where you are, right, the influx of currencies going up and down, rather, cryptocurrency may be your best option for food, goods, and services.
Yeah.
Right. But
Um,
but we all and this is the build, and I'm kind of asking the question at the same time, is that if we look at the example of what happened in South America, where they tried to go and say, okay, we're going to adopt this, and in all fairness, it was really to weaken the dollar, right? But
mhm,
when someone tried to implement that from a government level, it was a failed project because people weren't accepting it, governments weren't accepting it. So it's just
Right,
like
right.
it forces those people to sort of still straddle this fence of like, yeah, I need to do this, but I also, it's like grandma that kept, that literally remembers when the depression happened, and she, like, when she died, you find 100,000 in the walls, you know what I'm saying, because she just don't
mhm.
trust that bank, that sort of thing. Or the idea, we got to squash the idea too of people going, oh well, if I can't touch it, it's not real money. And I'm like, you don't
But
you
that's not
look at
true.
you look at your bank account online. That money is not physically in your hand. And if
Right,
all of
right.
us was to go to the bank right now and ask for dollars in terms of bills, the bank couldn't do it. It
Yep,
just
Well,
doesn't
yep.
exist.
well, how about
Don't try that, guys.
the banks only insure you up to $250,000,
Exactly.
right? So
Yeah.
you could put $1 million in there. If something happens to it, you're only getting 250 back.
I'm just really quick, like, again, addressing that thing that I find in our community where it's like, go, if I can't touch it, you know what I mean? How do I know it's real? And I'm like, bro, you don't know your quote unquote real money is real. It's just a number that's in a computer. That's
Yeah.
it.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I would, because Guru, I know you read a lot, you follow a lot of. Venezuela is actually doing very well, um, adapting crypto as a main source for currency.
Oh, absolutely,
Whereas
absolutely. I didn't want
years,
it to seem like everybody's failed, but
yeah, of
he
course,
he's gone through like a lot to make that happen for his community,
Yeah.
even to the point of, and I thought this was so intelligent that specifically in that case, everybody that signed up got some crypto when they
got
signed
crypto.
up. Yes,
Right.
Exactly.
yeah,
They get
Right.
to use it and see the benefit firsthand.
Which is the exact same thing we tried to do with the dollar with all of these loans, right? We tried to influx more cash into the system, which allows people to spend more.
Mm.
They did the same thing, except they used a digital currency, which actually allows them, depending on which side of the track you stand on, it actually allows you to understand and track the money even easier.
right,
So
Yeah.
I
At the
mean,
same time, doesn't inflate endlessly.
yeah, and so it's an interesting thing to see countries adapt it. They will adapt and adopt it and adapt to it because they have no choice.
yeah,
But ultimately, when we look at these countries around the world where they are doing heavy, and I know you spent some time in Africa too, Guru, when they're heavily, I mean that's what they do. They do everything off their phones, right? And so
yep,
the idea that I can have my Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever coins you choose to use, and that value, we see it as volatile, but it's not as volatile as the Naira in Nigeria.
right, right,
so
right, absolutely,
so what we consider volatile in the crypto market here, we do kind of see it from a very elitist point of view. Even the poor and disenfranchised in our country, right? We see it as from an elitist point of view because everyone has a bank account, or everyone should, on some level, have access to a bank account or a way to transfer money. But in a lot of these third world countries, that doesn't exist.
right.
Yeah. So we got another comment that said it's from Bufo on the Beat. He said, with the recent announcement of Ticketmaster partnering with legendary rock band Avenged Sevenfold to offer NFT gated tickets for their shows, do y'all think that this is going to be the new standard? Are the floodgates officially about to open now that Ticketmaster is on board? And I think based off what we were just talking about, it's like yes and no. Like that's a step in the right direction, because now for people who want to get access to that concert, right, they're going to be using the technology, but not everybody wants that, right? So it's as it becomes more prevalent, as there are more things that people can get access to, that people actually care about, that rely on NFT technology or on Web3 technology, that's when people will start to care. That's when people will get interested.
Any more questions? Because I think we've had these gentlemen for
Oh, I love it. Yeah, you
well an
guys
hour.
have been hanging out with us. Just epic conversation. I love all the comments and ideas here. I would love to just, if you guys wouldn't mind, just signing off and telling us, what are you doing right now, so people can follow what you're up to. Illmind, if you want to start.
Yeah, for sure. So shout to my man Bufo. I see a lot of my Squatter Knights members in here. The Web3 focus right now is Squatter Knights. We launched in March last year. So it's been about a year into the project, and
Wow.
we just recently completed our first Squad of Knights album called The Chronicles of SOK, which is entirely produced, performed, mixed by my Squad of Night members, which is a community of rappers, singers, producers, musicians, engineers, visual designers, and just music fans. And so, really, really crazy process. We launched a series of challenges where the night members got together to create music, and we created and we basically incentivized them to create music with one another. And so we took all these songs. We had almost 1,000 songs, and we broke it down and had to take the 25 best songs from that group to create this album. And we're going to roll it out very, very soon. We're doing a Web 2 launch, so it's going to be on DSPs, but we also have a very exciting Web 3 component, NFT component to it, where 100% of all the proceeds and income goes straight to the members of the community. And it's just a step in the direction of bringing people together, bringing strangers together, using Web3 technology to collaborate with one another, and then also on top of that, using Web3 technology to also deploy the actual IP. And we're going to keep doing it. So more challenges this year, more stuff inside of the metaverse. Royce and I have been speaking, and there. I don't want to speak too soon, but there may be some involvement with Royce on the album. Who knows?
Nice. We need
uh,
to get a live listening session in passage
yeah,
It's gonna absolutely be a
and the
Royce
heaven
yeah,
session,
experience.
brother.
yeah, exactly. So shout out to everybody in Web3 and just people that are kind of forward thinking and thinking about bringing communities together and like-minded people together to do cool shit. That's basically what this is about, in my opinion. And more to come. So yeah, check me out on at Illmind Producer on all social media platforms, and shout to all you guys for taking the time, and I appreciate you guys for inviting me.
Illmind,
Heck
quick
yeah.
question. Quick
Yeah.
question. Max, all of you this. Do you use Web3 or do you use Meta? What's your preferred word? Web3 or Meta?
I kind of use Web3. I use Web3 only because Meta is just like homeboy stole that name, so I can't really what I'm saying. So, but nah, yeah, Web3.
Guru, you want to talk about? And yes, I've heard about the Smoke Dizza project. Dizza keeps telling me he's going to play it.
Yeah, tell them play what we got so far.
I can't wait.
Yeah, a couple more songs and we'll be
And
done.
obviously, we can't talk about the docu just yet with you, Pat, and Duro, which
Yes.
is going to be a game changer.
Yeah, definitely something that is a long time in the making, and I just wanted to make sure that gets done. If people don't know what Royce is talking about, those other names that he named are a lot of the famous Black engineers who were along with me. Doro was kind of our Jackie Robinson, but who burst through and kind of put our foot down in hip hop as young Black engineers at a time when that wasn't happening. So that's what that's going to be about. I mean, for me, Collimation is a focus for me. That's the company that I have that does VR, AR, and 360. The big thing for me now, though, is just studying AI more and more. I'm writing a book called The Evil That Men Do, and it's focused on technology in and of itself is neutral. It's how people use the technology that can become evil. Those sort of things, and showing the difference of why a computer can never think like a human being. We have to start to combat these words that people use in the media of saying something, there really is no such thing as artificial intelligence. Like, that's a myth. There is no singularity coming. That, Ray Kurzweil was wrong. The Turing test is bullshit. And I'm sorry, explaining why those things are happening. Just and just from a real standpoint of taking these, again, the verbiage that people hear and that write in papers and breaking that down as to how we do inferences as human beings, how we think and how we come up with things, and what the problem with the way that a lot of the algorithms and the programs are being programmed in terms of deduction, induction, abduction, all those different things, and showing how us as human beings, how we think.
I love that. I want to get my hands on that.
Same question. Web3 or Meta? What do you
I definitely
use?
say Web3. And again, just the same thing that Illmind was saying. Like, it was smart for him to label it Meta, because he's doing the same thing that any other company did. Like, when your word becomes the thing, you are the brand name. Like, people don't realize that Band-Aid is really a Johnson and
I was going to
Johnson.
say the
Yeah,
same thing.
it's a Johnson and Johnson
Yep.
trademark name. It's really a medical adhesive, but it's become so synonymous with medical adhesive that we call everything a Band-Aid. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Kleenex. Same way, Kleenex, right?
Yeah.
Or just the same way we don't say search engine, we just say Google it. You know what I mean? Like, that thing has become
Yep.
it has become that. So that's what he was doing by naming it that. It was actually a smart move. But to answer your question, I don't like using it that way because it confuses people.
All right, last question. Book. What would be a book that you think everybody should read with in dealing with this?
There's a couple. I mean, if you're talking about AI, I would say The Myth of Artificial Intelligence. That's by Eric Larson. There's a great new one that just came out called Breaking Things at Work. That's by Gavin Mueller, Mueller. He expresses and goes through history. He basically takes the Luddites and compares that to where we are now. I don't know if we press for super time, but if you don't know what the Luddites are, you should definitely go back and research the Luddites, because it's a great example of people fighting against technology and saying that every technology doesn't need to be made, or the effects of certain things. Now, again, this was in London, you know what I'm saying, in the 1800s, but these are people that are fighting against a loom being created, because it's like, you're taking away my job of sewing. Or people don't really realize that when the phonograph was first made, there were artists who fought against that, because they were like, okay, if you record my voice, nobody's going to come to see me live. You know, like, so the Luddites were the perfect example of fighting back against technology for the human experience.
I love that.
Ansem, what are you working on?
What am I working on? I'm head of research at TCG Crypto. So we do all early stage investing, basically across every different vertical in crypto. So I lead the research. I do all the technical due diligence for our teams, work with our portcos, deal sourcing, also look at public markets and like opportunities there. So yeah, we're doing a whole bunch of stuff. If anybody has any like stuff that they're working on and want to reach out to me, you can do that. Always down to teach people and like inform people about crypto just generally. I just feel like there's still there's like a huge knowledge gap between what the average person knows about crypto and like how deep it really goes. So always down to do that. If you want to reach out.
And last but not least, Royce.
Yee.
My bad. What'd you say, Kino? My bad.
What's the last everything we're working on? Heaven Experience EP drops tomorrow. Tonight at midnight.
You could have said that looking like Russell Simmons over there with them glasses on.
I don't have no what glasses.
It's coming. I ain't got to see you. I know you wearing them.
No glasses.
It's coming out tonight. It's called the Heaven EP. It's a welcome into the universe that we're building, for lack of a better phrase. I don't even know if I'm using the right phrase, but the community that we're building.
Yep.
And we're just gonna use the music as a catalyst, to bring everybody together and see what we can create. I'm excited about the possibilities that go beyond the realm of what the music is. You know what I mean? I can give that to you however you want it, whenever you want it. But how can we assist each other? What can we come together and create? Can you imagine how the outsiders and the naysayers felt the first time they seen a picture of a bunch of strong, black, affluent, smart black people all together at the Rock Nation brunch? Probably made people nervous. It's like the same thing. Like-minded people, you know what I mean? So I'm excited about it. And I appreciate all of y'all for coming out, man. Ill, Guru, thank you for, showing up last minute. I appreciate y'all, bro.
Amen. Yeah.
And then Lex, obviously, for those of you who don't know, Lex is the brains behind the Heaven Experience in terms of the build out. Everything that you've been seeing, the music video, a lot of the graphics that have been coming out of Heaven, the Heaven world, has been created in the brainchild and baby of Lex. So.
My guy.
Oh man, it's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, really, this is just all inspired by the team and the world you guys have already created with this art, this IP. There's so much power and magic already here, and we're just trying to help express that and bring this community a little closer together. If you guys want to get in on what's going down with the Heaven Experience, if you want to get access to live performances, VIP hangouts, if you want to get access to discounts on merch, exclusive drops, we're going to be doing some really cool stuff around the Heaven EP and future music drops. So definitely go to heavenexperience.com, jump on the wait list, and next week is when the passes go live for 48 hours only. How fast, Kino, did the last sale?
The last
sell
sale,
out?
we sold out in about 15 minutes, close to 1,000 passes. So, it should go quickly this time. Yeah. But also looking forward to, me and Royce will be down in Miami soon. Illmind is doing an amazing event.
Yeah, he thought I was capping. I was going to pop up on you. You spoiled the surprise, Kino.
It's getting scary.
I was about to just pop up on him. Now you know.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Now I can't bring the gift I bought you, Ill, because now it's not gonna be a surprise. So
Oh,
I'm just gonna
man.
bring Keno.
Oh no! Don't do
My
that.
presence is a presence. Trust me, Illmind. It'll be great. You want to talk about the event and what you're doing, Illmind? Because I mean, I think that's pretty interesting and
Yeah, for
exciting.
sure. To keep it short, so my partner Don Mills, who's right here. See what's up, Don?
Hey, what's up, guys?
So Don is an amazing producer as well. So Don and I got a house together here in Miami. He moved here about a year ago. I moved here about 7 months ago. So
Is that what you call a house?
yeah. I guess so. But no, it's a really cool house in South Miami. We have a pool and all the cool things that typical studios don't typically have. And it's 5 rooms, and so we converted it into a whole studio, and we're hosting our first creative camp here. We're basically inviting our producer and artist and songwriter friends for a week of fun and recording and collaboration. We have a coffee truck that's going to be parked in the back with complimentary coffee from Colombia, courtesy of Iconic Coffee. We got a whole pig we're doing in the yard, like an actual whole roasted pig. Apologies to all my vegans in here, but we will have vegan options too. And yeah, we're gonna document the whole thing. It's gonna be a fun time. So definitely looking forward to it.
How does someone become a squad of knights?
So you just go to squadofnights.com or go to OpenSea and just click Squad of Knights NFT. Just make sure you click on the correct version and not a fake version. But the best way to get to the real link is to just go to squadofnights.com.
Perfect. And Anson, how could someone, if they have questions on crypto and they want to learn more about the space, how could they contact you?
Oh, is that for me or?
No, Anson.
Okay.
Did we lose him?
So I'll say.
Sorry, I'm muted.
There you go.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on here. On Twitter, or on Telegram. I probably get less cluttered stuff on Telegram. Just say at BLKNOIZ06. Or email. It's fine if people want to email ZT@tcg.co. Either one is fine. I'm pretty easy to contact on here.
Gentlemen, it's been an honor and a pleasure for all of you guys to join us. We really appreciate you. We appreciate the support. And hopefully we can do this again. Obviously, I think there's a lot to be covered. And I think this is one of those things where it's like maybe if I could talk all of you legends into this to maybe do this once every other week, or we can keep these conversations started. We especially need it in the hip hop community because I don't believe we're as advanced as we should be in this space. And I think with you 3, 4, 5 gentlemen as a part of this, it could really speed things along just in terms of us getting to get to a better place of understanding what this space is. So.
Hey, man, we'll have to do this again, gentlemen.